This one page right here could help save your employee's life. Hi, I'm Sergio, and today we're talking about entry permits for confined spaces. When confined spaces must be entered to perform work, certain procedures must be followed, especially for permit-required confined spaces. If you're not sure what a permit-required confined space is or how to identify one, make sure to check this video out first. If employees at your company are expected to enter permit spaces, then an entry permit will be required. An entry permit contains all the necessary information to plan and execute safe entry. Your entry permit serves as a checklist to ensure all hazards are identified and properly addressed to ensure that the job is completed safely. However, don't view it as just a checklist to be filled out. Your entry permit should guide you to determine what specific procedures will be completed to ensure safe entry and that conditions remain safe through the entire operation. Each permit space should have an entry permit with procedures and information specific to that space. I know. This is starting to sound like a lot of paperwork that needs to be done before every entry. Don't worry, it's not as bad as it sounds. Let's go through the process together. An entry permit provides details about the confined space so that there's no confusion as to what space needs to be entered, as making that mistake can be deadly. You'll also need to provide reason for entry into the space, which simply means you need to write down what needs to be done inside the space, as well as the individuals involved in the operation and their roles. From the entrance to the supervisor, it is crucial that each worker involved understands their roles and are properly trained to carry out those roles as well. Your entry permit also needs to include the hazards that will or may be encountered in the confined space and the controls to eliminate them or protect the workers from those specific hazards. For example, in a confined space with an oxygen depleted atmosphere, you need to determine if you're going to use ventilation to provide fresh air to the employee, or if you would need to provide an air supplying respirator because ventilation is not feasible. Now, once your employees enter the space, you will need to establish the techniques that will be used to ensure constant communication with those employees. This is especially important if the attendant recognizes increased hazards and they need to communicate those hazards to the employees in the space. Which brings me to the next point in the process. Trigger points need to be established. Trigger points are safety thresholds that must be set prior to entering the space. When these trigger points are hit, you need to plan for necessary steps that need to be taken after they are met. This includes stopping work, evacuating the space, and the next actions that need to be taken in order to safely complete the task. For example, if you have continuous monitoring of the space's atmosphere and the attendant notices a rise in H2S levels, at what point does the attendant need to make the call to pull the worker out? When this occurs and work must be stopped, it's best that the worker can rescue themselves and evacuate under their own power. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. When an emergency occurs where attendants cannot rescue themselves, a rescue plan must be implemented. That includes a rescue team or services to be called upon, and the procedures for calling on those services as well. Listing 911 is not a rescue plan. And that's it. See? Not too bad, right? With trained personnel and an effective confined space program, these permits provide very effective ways of ensuring everyone who enters the space is safe and remains safe. Depending on the space and the work to be completed, certain elements in the permit may require more attention and thought than others. So don't get in the habit of filling out the form the same each time. Even when covering all these areas, most permits are only 1 to 2 pages long. It's also important that you post a completed permit at the entry of the space, or you have an equally effective way of communicating that entry is taking place. If you need any help with establishing an entry permit for your permit spaces, or need any assistance with your confined space program as a whole, feel free to contact us using the information provided below. And if you have any ideas on safety topics we should cover next in our videos, be sure to let us know in the comments. Also, make sure to follow us on all social media platforms so you don't miss any more safety tips and tricks. And until next time, be safe and thank you.